Annie had just been reborn and started pretending to be crazy. She suddenly started beating her father, who came to pick her up. Father quickly stopped her. He thought it was his fault for causing the trauma to his daughter, but the next second he realized he could hear Annie's thoughts. Annie then thought to herself that a man would come to harass her soon. At first, her father didn't believe her words, but soon a thug really walked in. He was someone Annie's sister had sent over. Facing the thug's humiliation, Annie didn't feel nervous. Instead, she slapped the thug across the face. Then she threw some dirty water on him. The thug realized Annie was crazy and left immediately. After successfully driving the thug away, Annie, who was pretending to be mad, suddenly returned to normal. It turned out all that had been a deliberate act by Annie. She did this to protect herself. In her past life, Annie had been raped by the thug, and her father had listened to her sister's words, which caused the family's bankruptcy. Annie was even pushed off a cliff by her sister. But fortunately, God gave her a chance for revenge. Annie decided to make her sister pay. Just then, Annie's mother came to the room. She too realized that she could hear her daughter's thoughts. The man noticed his wife's confusion. He quickly pulled her aside and told her not to tell Annie about this yet, because Annie's emotions were still unstable, and she was easily triggered. Then Annie went back home with her parents. Meanwhile, her sister immediately started throwing a tantrum when she heard Annie was back. She pretended to be wronged and begged Annie not to take her family away from her, but Annie saw through her sister's disguise. At that moment, Annie's family also heard her thoughts. Just as everyone thought they were imagining things, Annie exposed her sister's true face in her mind. Her brother immediately opened the drawer and found it full of snacks. Her sister was immediately embarrassed. Then her mother took Annie upstairs to show her the room. Her sister saw Annie as her enemy. Then her father sent her sister back to her room to reflect. The remaining family members gathered for a family meeting. Since everyone could hear Annie's thoughts, they decided to keep the secret. They wanted to see what their sister would do. The next day, father introduced Annie to the family members one by one. When they got to the older brother, Annie couldn't help but think to herself how young he was, yet had to face the bankruptcy of the company. He had to hide and escape the debts. Hearing this, the older brother angrily stood up, was about to explode but was stopped by his brothers. The girl thought he looked bad and assumed he was sick, but the older brother quickly explained that he hadn't had enough rest. Then father introduced the second brother, but Annie thought he too was a poor soul, a university professor who had gotten involved in a scandal, not only losing his job but also suffering from severe depression. The third brother started to gloat when he saw this. He immediately gave the second brother a thumbs up, but when it came to his turn, things were even worse. This third brother was very naive. He was tricked by others and ruined his career in athletics. And finally, it was time for the sister. She not only joined forces with outsiders to bankrupt the family, but also borrowed high-interest loans under her father's name, forcing him into a dead end. The plagiarism of her mother's works was also all planned by her. In the end, she pinned all the blame on Annie, making the family think Annie was the traitor. But since she had been reborn, she would never let the tragedy happen again. And after hearing Annie's thoughts, the whole family fell into a strange silence.